know, learn how to vote, and encourage other people to vote. So we have Miss Sutton here that's coming from our state voting officials to go ahead and show you everything you need to know how to vote and to make sure that everyone is able to come out and do so. So there's many options, and she's going to share it at this time. Thanks so much for coming out, Miss Sutton. You are awesome. Let's secure the vote, and let's make sure we teach people what to do.
Thank you, Mr. London. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the Falcon Group for hosting this virtual voter education on this Saturday morning, because knowing how to cast a ballot in Georgia during the COVID-19 pandemic is important. Also, I want to talk to you about poll workers today. They're critical, particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic, to help social distance our voters, also to help sanitize all of our equipment during in-person voting. But also today I'm going to talk about the new absentee portal, which is only 3 weeks old, how to fill out an absentee request, where to drop it off, also how to get involved with advance and early voting. And finally, I'm going to end it up with registration today and my information. If you have a question, you can always text me. To the right, I can see any questions that you pose on Facebook, and I'd be happy to address them as we move along. First, I'd like to thank the Falcon Group for coordinating this event for Bryan County and so many people who need the information about how to cast a ballot for the November 3rd general presidential special election. Thank you. Poll workers. Already, through the Secretary of State's office, we've attracted more than 25,000 poll workers for the state of Georgia and our 159 counties. Ordinarily, that is a task for each individual county, but during this COVID-19 pandemic, because of our traditional poll worker is 72 years old, and a lot of them have opted out not to be in a public arena at that time, we have this portal at securevotegeorgia.com for people to sign up. Once you put your information here at securevotegeorgia.com, and I'm going to show you what the application looks like. This is the application. It's just some simple information, your name and address. That information will go to your county where they will call you. So please put a number or email that is good for you. A lot of us only answer calls from contacts in our phone. So if you do decide that you'd like to be a poll worker on November 3rd, it's important that you answer your phone. Poll workers, we need 3 for every precinct for them to open. And I want you to know that counties determine how many polls they'll have. They determine where those polls are located. They also hire and train their own poll workers. The responsibility of the Secretary of State's office is to provide equipment that's safe and secure and to ensure that the final tally statewide is accurate. I want to thank everyone who's already put in information to be a poll worker, including my own daughter. She's going to work here in McDuffie County. So it's really an important call. Thousands of poll workers come out and have the civic duty to work in our polls. And it is a seasonal part-time job. You don't work for free. You will get paid for training, which usually is 3 to 4 hours beforehand. And counties all do it differently because it's up to the purview of the county to determine that. But I would encourage everyone who needs a little extra cash or would like to see firsthand how elections are run in Georgia by becoming a poll worker. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the new absentee portal. This is just 3 weeks old, and the best place, the easiest place for you to get access to this is at securevotegeorgia.com. When you go to, and I'm sorry, that is not the screen I want to show you. When you go to this site, securevotegA.com, you'll see that pop up, and there you'll tap it. And that's where you'll see this application. I'm sorry. Just went over that. I want to talk about your absentee ballot. The next thing would be at securevotegA.com, the same website that's streaming as a banner underneath our stream. You can tap the button in the top right corner, Secure Absentee. That will take you to the new online absentee ballot portal. The next thing you will see is this picture of our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. You'll hit the red button at the bottom, and immediately it will take you to the portal. Now, I want you to know that this has never been done in Georgia before, online absentee balloting. So we're really excited. We already have more than 1 million registered Georgia voters who've taken advantage of this fast way to request your absentee ballot. In Georgia, you don't have to have an excuse to request an absentee ballot. If you are a registered Georgia voter, you can get one sent to your home. During this COVID-19 pandemic, we are encouraging all voters to take advantage of this and also give you time to really go over your ballot. When we go over it, I'm going to explain to you that there's also 2 constitutional amendments and a state referendum on every ballot for this election. So these are questions you might want to spend more time on during your voting. After you go to that portal, the next thing that you will see, I have several slides in here I want to show you. You'll see this. All you need to request your absentee ballot is your name, your birthday, and your Georgia driver's license or your Georgia state ID number. That information is tapped into the driver's license services. It also has your signature on file. In Georgia, we have a 2-step verification to ensure that the person requesting the ballot is the registered voter. Once you fill out that information, it will be immediately sent to your county elections office, and they will ensure that you get your absentee ballot. I want to show you a great way that you can track that absentee ballot, and that's through my voter page. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov. This voter page has so many resources, but I first just want to show you how you can request your absentee ballot. Once you put your information on that right-hand side, and I'm going to show you my own absentee ballot request. In the bottom left, that's where you will make your request. Once you tap on that, it will allow you to make your request. So why would you want to make the request through mvp.sos.ga.gov versus the online absentee portal? Well, if you don't have a Georgia driver's license or a Georgia state ID, you're going to need to go through this system and print out your application. This is how we've been doing it for a very long time. I want to show you what the application looks like. So this is the application if you don't have a Georgia driver's license or Georgia state ID to request through the online portal. Every line is important, but I want to highlight a couple of lines that voters tend to neglect, but will hold up their ballot in the mail, and that is your signature. Your signature is important. We keep those on file, or your county elections supervisor does, so that they can refer to your signature to ensure that you are the person requesting this ballot. Another important part of this application is line number 6, where it asks for an email and phone number. And that's important because the Georgia State Elections recently made a rule change during this COVID-19 pandemic. And that is that if you make a request and they need to call you, if the election is within 12 days, they're going to contact you the next day. If the election is more than 12 days out, they're going to call you or email you within 2 days. So it's really important that you check your email, you put here that the phone number that you provide is one that you will answer in case they need more verification. They can get in touch with you and you can make that correction at your county elections office so they can send you your absentee ballot. I also want to show you the bottom part of this absentee ballot request and talk to you about rolling ballots. In the bottom, on line number 10, it asks if you qualify for any of these populations. Are you military? Are you older than 65? Do you have a disability? If you fit in one of these criteria, you check the box and you will continue to get absentee ballots for the remainder of that election year. However, if you go in person to vote that election year, you will need to make that request again. Now, if you don't fit in any of those categories, then you will need to request an absentee ballot for every election. But Georgians can request that absentee ballot up to 180 days before an election. So that's 6 months before an election that people can start requesting their absentee ballots. Now, if you were like me and made the request many weeks ago, you might be wondering, where is it? Well, in Georgia, you can only send out the absentee ballots 45 days before the election. So they've started rolling out this past week. And if you've already made the request, expect to see one in the mail in the next week. Now, if there's a problem and you don't see it, the first thing I would suggest to do is go to my voter page. And let's go there again. I want to show you that site. When you go to mvp.sos.ga.gov and you put in your information, and like we saw before in the bottom left, that is where you'll make the request. After you make the request, you can also track that request. And I'm going to show you my own personal request. Right below me, no, catty corner. That is my June 9th primary request. And it says what day they received my request, what day my county sent out the ballot, and what day they received the ballot back. I'll get you a better look at that. So I want you to see that, because that is a really good tool for voters to check on the status of their absentee ballot. It's incumbent upon all of us to take an active role to ensure not only that we're registered, but also we need to make a plan. How are we going to vote during COVID-19? Because we got information from the United States Postal Service that service has been delayed. That means if you're going to return your absentee ballot or even your application, you need to think about how many days you need to ensure that they receive it so they can return your ballot. We've been told that people need at least 10 days to allow for delivery of mail within a county. I'm going to tell you what Georgia law states. Georgia law states that a person can request an absentee ballot up to 3 working days before an election. But that was made long before COVID-19. I really strongly want to encourage people to do it today. Request your absentee ballot today if that's your plan. Because in Georgia, we have a trifecta of ways for you to vote. In fact, the RAND Corporation, which is a nonprofit think tank, did a study of all of the states since COVID-19, and they found that Georgia was one of only 9 states with the greatest flexibility for voters during this pandemic. And they determined that because of our trifecta of ways for voters to cast their ballot. Not only do we have no excuse absentee ballots, we also provided during this pandemic early voting. And in Georgia, it's at least 16 days over the whole state. Counties can elect to do more. I know Chatham does more. I know Fulton County does more. But in a little bit, I'm going to show you the mandatory days, because it's 3 whole weeks and a Saturday, that people have an opportunity to go and cast a ballot. And I will tell you, because I have gone to advance or early, it's interchangeable terms, many different counties, and I have never seen a line during advance or early voting. So those people who wait until election day, they can expect to probably stand in a line this November 3rd, because we are expecting a historic turnout in Georgia. More than 5 million voters are going to cast a ballot, we predict, for this general election. That's more than a million more than 4 years ago during the last presidential election. So it's really important for voters to take ownership of their time and utilize either the no excuse absentee balloting or the advanced voting. But what was the third way that Rand determined Georgia had one of the greatest flexibilities during COVID-19 for voters? That was the in-person voting. We saw in other states, a lot of precincts were closed. Some voters in other states only had a few areas, a few polling locations where they could cast a ballot. But in Georgia, we had so many opportunities. And I want to remind you too that the counties are the ones who determine what polling locations will be open. But what had happened is because of COVID-19, schools and churches and other places that traditionally opened as precincts were concerned about the virus. But now that people have a better understanding of how to control the virus, more have opened back up. And in the Atlanta metro area, there have been great strides for bigger arenas and opportunities for people to vote. I know Bryan County is doing an excellent job at ensuring people have precincts to vote. And I want you to know, when you go into a precinct, the Secretary of State's office is recommending that all counties adhere by CDC guidelines. That means you will see all poll workers wearing a mask. And we strongly encourage voters to respect our poll workers and wear a mask, because most of our poll workers are retired and older than 70. With that in mind, knowing that they're high risk, we would ask voters to respect our poll workers' health and wear a mask themselves. Back in March, when we knew that the primary was coming, the Secretary of State sent PPE to all of our counties. And when I do a live demonstration of the paper ballot system, I'm going to tell you some ways that individual counties are working to ensure that Georgians are safe from COVID-19. We have never had a report of anyone contracting COVID-19 in Georgia, and we're going to keep it that way by everybody adhering to CDC guidelines. Now that you've seen how you can track your absentee ballot, I just want to give a suggestion. If you go ahead and make your request today, and let's say in 10 days, you don't see activity on there, I would call my county elections office and ensure that they received it. You can always go in person and wear a mask if you want to fill out an absentee ballot application in person. But how do you return these? An application, and this is important to note, so bear this in mind. If you have filled out an application, you can fax it, you can email it, you can return it in person, you can put it through the mail, but give yourself 10 days. If you go through the portal, it's going to be immediate. So I want you to remember that. SecureVoteGA.com. The ballot, however, which we're about to talk about and how to fill it out, cannot be faxed or emailed. It needs to be dropped in person or mailed. A lot of counties, and I know Bryan County has Dropbox. That's the fastest way to ensure that your ballot is counted. Let's look at the absentee ballot, and I want to give you some tips to ensure that you have no problems casting that ballot. This is a demonstration absentee ballot, but it's really important for Georgia voters to follow the instructions. Use a blue or black pen. Fill in the oval completely. It's like an SAT test, or those tests a lot of us took in high school, these Scantron tests. These are scanned by a machine, and if people don't follow the directions, it may not be cast. And I've heard of people using crayons and markers. It must be a blue or black pen. I want to show you some examples. In the bottom, those are all things that will not allow the scanner to read your ballot. If you don't completely fill in the oval, an X, a check, a strike through, a circle, even words. I saw something funny. I follow all, I work with more than 30 elections offices in the state, mostly South Georgia. And one election supervisor put on there, and no tobacco spit or coffee stains. And I just say that because, you know, she must have seen something like this to have to put it on her Facebook page to tell voters, keep it clean. Don't, you know, I want to also reiterate that when you're at home, you'll have a lot of time to look over your ballot. I've already reviewed at mvp.sos.ga.gov my own ballot, and I want to tell you that it is even longer than I anticipated. So I truly want to really encourage people to go absentee. Go ahead and request your application. Go use the application process to request your ballot today, so you'll get it in plenty of time. I plan to return my ballot. I haven't received it yet, but I'm going to return it by mid-October. And I'll tell you why. I want to make sure that my county elections office has plenty of time to process the ballots. Now, the State Board of Elections had another emergency rule, which allows the counties to start looking at the absentee ballot, ensuring that it's appropriate, and even scanning the information, but they're not allowed to tally the numbers until when all the precincts close on election day, precincts within their county. Our Georgia County Elections Office have all of them, all 159, have had a tremendous job this year. Not only have they helped to roll out the largest implementation of voting machines in US history, but they've also had to cope with the pandemic, something no one has ever had to work with. And they've had to deal with poll workers who got sick, precincts that they lost, people who were not trained after the shutdown, which caused some people to lose memory of how to operate the machines. But since that time, the Secretary of State has urged counties to do more in-person voting that's safe with masks and social distancing, more online training. There will be a tech at every precinct during the June 9th primary. There was at least one tech for every county, but now with one at every single precinct, we are certain that things will go much better. So those are the things not to do that you see in that bottom. And I also want to show you something that's really, really important. Your envelope. On your envelope, that's your oath. That is your affidavit that you indeed are the person who's requested this ballot and you're a registered Georgia voter. It's so important for you to sign this because this is another step for the two-step verification in Georgia. If you don't have a signature there, you're going to get a call or an email. There's going to be a holdup on casting your ballot. So please make sure that you sign the oath. Also, absentee ballots come with an envelope for you to insert them in. And I know during the primary, it was more like a sleeve, but there will be an envelope for you to insert it. Then you insert it in the outer envelope, and it needs to be addressed to your county election supervisor and sign the oath. In Bryan County, you can return these at the absentee ballots. And Cindy Reynolds, your election supervisor, who is doing a tremendous job during all of the challenges this year, has set up one absentee ballot box at Richmond Hill at the Bryan County Administrative Building, and that's off Captain Matthew Freeman Drive. And the other is in Pembroke at the county courthouse, and that's off South College Street. I think it's wonderful that Bryan has two absentee ballot boxes, and I really encourage all of our Bryan County, Georgia voters to utilize those. Save a stamp, get it done that day. You don't have to worry about the slowdown with the mail service. I want to talk now about early advance voting. And first I'm going to show you what's going on in Bryan County, because statewide, it starts October 12th and runs through October 30th. That's 15 weekdays, and also on October 24th, a Saturday voting. And here Cindy has put on the Bryan County Elections website information. She has said here that the advanced locations and early voting for November 3rd has been moved to the Richmond Hill Recreation Department, and that's at Timber Trail Road. And she reiterates here, like it is statewide, that it begins October 12th, and that is Columbus Day, but we will start early voting then, and runs through October 30th. That is a perfect time if you determine that you'd like to try out the new system and do in-person voting. I've been to that location at least 3 times. They have wonderful poll workers there who are sanitizing the voter cards, just as the state has requested, between every voter, because there is a microchip here and it can't get wet. Initially, there was a thought that these voter cards could be thrown in a tray of disinfectant, but then this cannot get too much moisture. So I've seen the poll workers at this location tediously, and other locations too for that matter, cleaning each card, cleaning each ballot marking device, each printer, ensuring that no voter has to be concerned about contracting COVID-19. I want to mention too that Cindy Reynolds, your county election supervisor, put here that Pembroke will be voting in the traditional place where you have voted before. So that's off South College Street. So that's really important information. Your advanced voting, 16 days. When is the best time to go? Well, usually the first day of advanced voting is busy. The last day is very busy, and the Saturday is busy. So if you could make plans to go in the middle of the week, that would be ideal. The middle of the day is traditionally the absolute slowest. So as Secure the Vote, which is part of Secretary of State's office, we want to ensure that every voter who has the right to exercise and cast a ballot in this election is safe during COVID-19. So my first recommendation would be an absentee ballot, which could be through securevotega.com or through mvp.sos.ga.gov. Second would be advance early voting. And in Bryan County, here's your information. If you're listening and you're in another county, whether it's Chatham or Effingham, Liberty, any other county, you can text me and I'll give you that information. I'd be happy to ensure that you cast a ballot. Election day would be my last choice to vote on November 3rd because of the historic turnout that we're expecting. And I want you to know that June 9th for the primary and August 11th, which many counties had runoffs, more than half of Georgia voters elected to vote absentee. The other half were a combination of election day and advance early voting. I think it was wonderful that the secretary sent out those absentee ballot requests in March, because it made awareness to so many Georgia voters that they have this opportunity. They don't need an excuse. Now, that was an expensive mailing, and out of 6.9 million voters who were mailed, only 1 million responded. And under Georgia law, it is incumbent upon the county to process those absentee ballot applications that the voter requests. But I thought it was a really good initiative to make people aware of their ability to vote absentee from home in Georgia. The next thing I want to go through is actually showing you how the system works. For about 18 years, Georgia was using a direct reporting device for voting. We weren't able to audit those selections. Instead, when you made a choice, it immediately, the screen left and that selection was sent to the county and then to the Secretary of State's office. But this system allows you to not only review your ballot, but it has a paper ballot, and there is a way to verify and audit every election three ways. There is not only this paper ballot, there's also a QR code that indicates the selections here, the human readable selections. So the QR code, the paper ballot, and then the scanner. Once you put your paper ballot into the scanner, it will take an image of every single ballot. So let's walk through the process if you decide to go in person. When you go to your local precinct, and know that if you go early or advance, you can go to any location in your county for advance voting. If you decide to go election day, you will need to go to the precinct listed on your precinct card. And after this, I'm going to show you how you can pull up your precinct card or get it emailed to you. You'll need to show your photo ID, and so many types of photo ID are accepted in Georgia. Most people use their Georgia driver's license or Georgia state ID. You can also use your military ID, a tribal ID. You can use any state or federal employee ID. So many different ways. So you present that to your poll worker. They'll find you on that poll pad. Once they confirm that is you, they'll turn around the poll pad and ask you to sign the oath. This is verifying that you are the registered voter and that you haven't voted before in this election. But I want you to know that this alerts poll workers if someone has already voted. Whether you've requested an absentee ballot, there'll be a flag that comes up for poll workers. Whether you returned an absentee ballot, there will be a flag for poll workers. But this oath is important to ensure that you are the voter. Then you'll get your voter card, and voter cards have none of your personal information on it. This is simply your ballot with your contests. So even in someone's own home, two people could have a different card during a primary. During a primary, when you have to request a party, someone's card and their ballot could be different. Now, in a general election, everyone gets the same ballot. You don't need to ask for a particular party ballot. Once you get this card, they'll direct you to your personal voting kiosk. Every voter who votes in person in Georgia will have a ballot marking device and a printer. You'll insert this card in this yellow area, and I'm going to show you a live presentation of how this works. But once you insert the card, it will immediately upload your ballot. You'll make your choices by tapping the screen. Some counties are giving out gloves to their voters. I've seen fingertip protection. The secretary sent out styluses to the counties in the fall, early summer. And some of those styluses are disposable. Some of them are being sanitized in those trays because there's no mechanical information in the styluses. So we want to make sure that everybody is safe. You'll make your selections here, and then if you need to change a selection, then you will need to hit again to make a selection for that contest. At the end of the ballot, there on number 3, it'll give you a choice to review your ballot one more time or print your ballot. That's when you'll print your ballot, and once that comes out of your printer, which only takes a couple of seconds, we're asking that voters review their selections. Look over the human readable part to ensure that that is your intent. What if you look at it and you realize you've made a mistake? You know, even though you were able to change it during the ballot and review it before you printed it and you changed your mind or you made a mistake. That's when you raise your hand and a poll worker will come over and legally spoil the ballot. There's a process because these ballots are kept. Because from that poll pad to the ballot marking device to the printer, all of these have numbers, and it's tracked throughout the day at the precinct. They can see how many voter cards were made. They can see how many ballots were printed, and they can see how many went into the scanner. But if you have not put that ballot, this paper ballot, in the scanner, you have still not cast a ballot. Do not walk out with this paper ballot. It's not your receipt or souvenir. It is a legal document which is kept and stored in case there is a need for an audit or a recount. But when they legally spoil it, they'll write on it, and once they crease it over, the scanner cannot accept ballots that have creases. I'm going to show you the scanner because I don't have one here. And it's a really big machine. It would be very difficult to miss. Some precincts will have one, but really large precincts may have several. This is another reason that we needed more poll workers, and we knew that in November. We needed more poll workers to ensure that the voter comes over to the machine and inserts their ballot. Those ballots can be inserted face up or face back in either direction, and that's when the machine will take a picture of every ballot, because at the end of the night, if the election supervisor wants to put those up on a wall to see the ballots, and remember, it has none of your personal information on it, they can do a statistical audit of those ballots. That ballot, after you've slid it into the scanner, will drop into a bin, and about 2,500 ballots fit. When it's time to take them out, 2 poll workers will go together to put it in a sealed, locked bag, because they are treated with very precious care. It's legal information that needs to be stored by the counties in the event there is a need for a recount or an audit. After that happens, your poll worker will give you your Georgia sticker and you'll be done voting. If you happen to walk out with your paper ballot, you've missed your opportunity. So make sure you put your paper ballot in there. I've been to many counties during the pilot last November, during advance early voting, election day. I've never seen anybody walk out with a paper ballot, because not only is there someone at the scanner, there's people making sure that voters carry it over to the scanner. There's also someone at the door making sure no one walks out this. But I just impress this upon you because I don't want anyone to put it in such a way and then be disappointed that they can't walk back in with that paper ballot. I had told you that I'm going to show you how to get your precinct card, and I want to do that right now. If you go to mvp.sos.ga.gov, and you'll remember that's the site where you put in your information to the right, and then in that bottom left that I had highlighted, you can request your precinct card. And this is where you can print it or email it. You're going to want to know exactly what polling location you're going to if you go on November 3rd. If you go to another site, you might be redirected to another precinct, or you may be asked to fill out a provisional ballot, which is a paper ballot, and you might need to return with your information. If you're given, let's say you go in and you don't have your photo ID. No one in Georgia is turned away to vote if you're registered, but you will be asked to come back within 3 days with your photo identification so they can cast that ballot. If you're given an emergency ballot, that's because there has been a power outage. I know in Chatham during the June 9th, because of so many historic buildings and because of the pandemic had closed precincts, there was some initial power outages. But with this new system, which has about 3 times more equipment than that direct reporting device, there are 50-pound emergency backup batteries. And it has been a lot of work for poll workers to set all of this equipment up. But when the Secretary of State and the Georgia voters who decided they wanted a paper ballot, but when the Secretary of State and a group of professionals with voting and legislators were determining which system to use, the most important thing that it was a secure system and an accessible system. I want to show you that this system has an audio tactile interface, and that helps people who have different physical challenges or who are blind to be able to cast a ballot in privacy and in person. They'll use their headphones to tap into one of these jacks. The other jack allows for the jelly button and for the sip and puff device, like the one Christopher Reeve used after his he became paralyzed. This system, I've used it with my eyes closed, and the buttons are so big and tactile that it allows people to cast a ballot, advance their ballot, either with this yellow right button or this down blue button. And this is how they make their selection here. You can change the pace, change the volume. There's a lot of ways for people to cast their ballot. Let's go ahead and do a live demonstration of the Georgia paper ballot. You start with your card. You're going to want to put the arrow in because that's where this microchip is, and that's how the machine will read it. So let's walk over here. First, I want to show you some interesting things about this system. Here, you can change the text size. See how much larger that went? That went from the normal standard, which is what all the machines will appear as soon as a card comes up. But if you just go to text size in this top row and change it to big, if you forgot your glasses or you have a visual impairment, I've talked to people who said just changing it bigger meant that they didn't have to use that ATI. You can also change the view. You can go from color to white on black, a reverse contrast. That's good, I'm told, for people with macular degeneration, with glare issues. But for today's demonstration, let's put it back on color. There's also a black and white version, which we can use. The system will alert you. This contest is blank. Before, the system didn't give you cues. Also, with the old system, some people were reporting that it was jumpy. This system will not immediately leave the screen until you advance it in the bottom right-hand corner and hit next. Let's go back. Suppose I decided, no, I don't like what I chose. You can either go to the button and hit previous, or you can use this second row and change which contest you're going to. This one, if I decided, I changed my mind, I tap it again, then make my choice, and I can either go here to advance the ballot to the next question or down here to the bottom right. I purposely did not vote in that one to show you what the system will do to help voters, because it is your legal right to not make a selection in every contest, but we want to ensure that you know you missed it. Let's say I want to change this one. Tap it again, make your selection, and advance it in the bottom right. So here is my ballot, but it says here, this contest is blank. Just tap on it. It's going to bring you back to that contest, and the cue is here too. This contest is blank. So you'll make your selection, hit next, going down here to hit next, or you can just hit the review button to see your entire ballot. At this point, you'll scroll down, make sure all your selections are your intent. Sorry. And then in the bottom right, you can hit print ballot. You'll get this alert. Would you like to review it one more time or print your ballot? Well, let's go ahead and review it because this is just a demonstration ballot. It's just going to take a couple of seconds for your absentee ballot to print. My printer is cold. I haven't printed anything today. But once you get that absentee ballot, and then hit print. Once it comes out, we're asking all voters to read over the human readable part to ensure that that is, sorry, it's taking an extra second, to make sure that that's your intent. You'll have a personal printer and a personal ballot marking device. Once you're sure that's your intent, you'll walk it over to the scanner with your voting card. You'll hand it to the poll worker. You'll insert your ballot yourself. You'll get your sticker, and then you'll be done with your in-person voting. I want to go over registration just a minute for people who still haven't registered to vote in Georgia, because in every election, registration for voters ends 30 days before an election. So for the November 3rd, it's October 5th. If you'd like to register today, which I recommend if you're not registered and you are a U.S. citizen, a resident of the county that you're going to register in, you are going to be 18 on election day, or you know, older than 18, and you're off papers. That means you've served your time and you've paid any fines and you've not been deemed mentally incompetent by a judge. I'd like to show you where you can register to vote. You can go to mvp.sos.ga.gov and hit register. At that point, it will take you it'll take you to this page. That page asks if you qualify. It goes through the different identifiers. And once you identify that, then it will take you to this next screen for you to check off the boxes to ensure that you're eligible to vote. And then at that point, you can either register with your Georgia driver's license, your Georgia state ID, or you can print out your registration to give to your county elections office. So remember, October 5th is the last day to register, because in Georgia, it always ends 30 days before an election. I want to go through and see if there's any other pertinent information. I haven't seen any questions, so I'm going to check on Facebook here to make sure no one has a question. While I'm waiting for that to pull up, let's just go over again. Early voting starts October 12th. It runs for 3 weeks, 5 every weekday. So that's 15 weekdays plus October 24th, which is a Saturday. If you decide to go absentee ballot, where you have a lot of time, more than half of Georgia's voters have decided since this pandemic to use this no excuse voting opportunity. You can put it in the drop box there in Bryan County. Cindy Reynolds has put 2 out for Georgia voters because of the slowdown with the mail system and the concern with the pandemic. This is the swiftest way for you to vote absentee, is to drop it in the absentee ballot box. And a reminder, your application can be faxed or emailed, dropped in person, mailed, but your ballot must be mailed or dropped in person or put in the drop box. The ballot cannot be faxed or emailed. So I'm not seeing any questions. And I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. I want to leave you with a couple of pieces of information. This is a free app you can put on either your Android or your Apple phone. It's GASOS. It's a free app that can let you update your registration. If you've moved, you need to have the correct address. So when you go in to vote, or if they're going to send your absentee ballot, that your registration is up to date. Do that today, this week. Update your registration, make sure all the information is correct. This app also allows you to register to vote, see your elected officials. It has so much information for voters. It's free. I suggest you put it on now and keep it on there until election day, when all of your voting has been done, so you can keep track of your ballot. If you have to fill out a provisional ballot, you can see the status of that. I want to go over the important dates. The last day to register to vote in Georgia is October 5th. If you're not registered to vote, do it today. Immediately after you register to vote, you can request your absentee ballot. Statewide, advance and early voting starts October 12th and runs through the 30th. That's 15 weekdays of early voting. I've never seen a line. Go ahead and use your time wisely if you decide to vote in person, and do it early advance voting. Saturday voting statewide is October 24th. That's another great opportunity if you work all during the week, but you still want to vote in person and you still want to avoid the lines. Go October 24th. A couple of websites that I talked about today that are great resources for all registered voters or people who would like to register to vote. mvp.sos.ga.gov is where you can track your absentee ballot, track your provisional ballot. You can register, you can request your absentee ballot. Securevotega.com, you can request your absentee ballot, you can register to vote, and you can sign up to become a poll worker. I really appreciate you tuning in with me today. I hope I've answered all your questions about voting in Georgia during COVID-19. But if there's something that I've left out, I invite you to text or call me at 470-989-8833, and I'd be happy to answer your questions about Georgia voting. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please go vote, whether you vote absentee, early advance, or election day. Your vote matters.